Welcome to Betting with Brooke and Benny here, the Christmas edition of the show, Week 16 of the NFL season. It's an interesting week here, Brooke. A lot like last week was we talked about. We said it on the Wednesday show last week. We had some COVID cases start to pop up. We said it wasn't the end of it. It ended up with actually three games getting moved, two to Tuesday, one to Monday. All those teams are going to be playing on short rest this weekend, which is something we're going to have to factor in here. Definitely an interesting time of year to say the absolute least. But before we get into any of that, let me introduce my co-host, Brooke Kromer. What's going on today?
How are you guys? I'm happy today. My Rams won last night in a great game. Kind of a struggle, but COVID is driving us all crazy at this point. So I'm just glad we can get our show on the road. We don't have to postpone anything because we are in the comfort of our homes. Thank goodness. How are you today?
I'm okay. I mean, listen, it hasn't been easy in the Ricciardi household this week. All my kids are actually home doing virtual school today, so not the easiest time for me to do a show. I had to lock them all in their rooms and give them a bunch of candy canes to keep them occupied for the next half hour. So there's definitely a good chance that at least one or multiple of them will stop by and hang out at some point during the show. So yeah, well, some guest appearances. We'll see what happens here. It is what it is. You got to kind of deal with it. Everybody's dealing with COVID issues one way or another. So, like the NFL teams, we're just going to power through and put our best foot forward and see what we can do here. So we have a lot of games we're going to talk about here today. It is a full slate of NFL action. I do too many things at this point. NFL action this weekend. We have all 16 teams, all 16 games, all 32 teams are in action here. We're getting down to the playoff push. I mean, the AFC right now, let's start there real quick. The AFC is ridiculous at this point. We have, I think, 5 teams at 8-6, another 5 teams at 7-6-1 or 7-7 behind them, all fighting for like the last 3 or 4 playoff spots here. So a lot of times, you could lose a game and still win the other 2 and still kind of back your way in. At this point, though, all of those teams that are in contention, Brooke, they basically all have to win out at this point because some of them are going to. And, if you lose 2 of your final 3 games here, it's probably going to seal your fate, right?
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to be tough. I think people are going to be putting it all on the line. I mean, they're going to have to. It's like win or go home at this point. It's like the playoffs. It's like pre-playoffs over here. I think some teams are definitely feeling the heat this week.
And, it's interesting. I was looking at the standings today. There is actually only one team that has clinched a playoff spot as of now with 3 weeks left to go.
Crazy.
And that is the Green Bay Packers at 11-3 in the NFC over there. Your Rams winning last night, the Cardinals losing a unforgivable loss to the Detroit Lions over the weekend there throws a lot of other things into flux right now. I mean, we have divisions that are up for grabs. We have playoff spots that are up for grabs. Like, this is going to be a very interesting 3 weeks of football. And then again, you have all this COVID issues that are going on with teams that are losing players left and right. And the thing is, the thing about this whole COVID thing is that if there's an outbreak in a locker room, it spreads quickly. That's the whole thing about this Omicron variant that's going out there right now. So you start getting 1 or 2 positive tests, there's going to be more players that come up at the end of the week. We're going to have more situations like the Rams this week or like the Browns where, you wind up with like 7 or 8 starters that aren't playing and aren't out there. I hate to say it, but it's going to be something that affects the way things go here. So at this point in time, I mean, you basically want your players or the teams you're rooting for to kind of go home and put themselves in bubble wrap for 4 days and then, just be ready to play on Sunday or on Saturday. Actually, we have Saturday games this week too. Just be ready to play on Saturday or Sunday right now and, hope that you can kind of survive and advance, which is really what it is right now. This is like the Hunger Games in the NFL at this point.
Right.
You gotta you gotta try to hope that you have enough players to go out there and do what you got to do, and you got to go out there and win these games. So let's talk about some of these games that these teams need to go win. Some of the games that you're interested in this week. We're going to start with the Colts and the Cardinals here. This game opened with the Cardinals as a 1.5 point favorite. They're down to like -1 right now, so a little bit of movement there, but not a lot overall. What are you looking at here for Indianapolis and Arizona?
I think if you asked about 3 weeks ago, my answer would have been completely different. But The Colts have won 5 of their last 6 games, while the Cardinals have lost 2 in a row now. And Kyler Murray has thrown 3 interceptions in just the last 2 games. Meanwhile, Colts running back Jonathan Taylor rushed for 170 yards and a touchdown in the win versus the Patriots. And he leads the league with 1,518 rushing yards and 17 rushing touchdowns this season. We are seeing a star being born this year with Jonathan Taylor. And the Cardinals' run defense just so happens to be struggling this season, allowing opposing running backs to go for 111.8 yards each week. That's pretty scary when you're going to go up against arguably the best back in the league right now. And then more bad news for the Cardinals. Everyone knows DeAndre Hopkins out for the season. James Conner dealing with an ankle injury. We're going to see where that leaves him this week. I just think the value here is going with the Colts to upset the Cardinals. And after Arizona's Week 15 performance, it's pretty believable that the Colts could take home this W on the road. And I think the bet early, you should take the bet early this week. So the line's going to move, and I think that there's value right there.
Yeah, when we talk about the -1 lines on either side and it moving from -1 to +1, which is kind of what you're talking about here, that is something that definitely could happen by the end of the weekend. It's not really a big move when that happens. So those things happen all the time. And it's not like, oh my God, the line switched from 1 to 1. It's 1 point here or 1 point there. Basically kind of a coin flip game. What I would say right now, if you agree with Brooke, which I think I kind of do too, I think there is value on the Colts here. I'm not going to take the +1.5 though. Just take them straight up on the money line. Get I forget what it is, maybe +120 or something like that. Whatever they are on the money line there is probably the best bet that you have here if you're on the Colts side, because again, what is taking +1 or +1.5 really going to do for you at this point? So I agree there. I think the value is on the Colts side. Take the Colts, take them on the money line, take them now, because if it does switch to them being +1 to -1, you're going to go from +120 to like -110. So take the extra 30 basis points now while they're being offered. So the next game is a very interesting one. The Buffalo Bills against the New England Patriots, basically playing right now for the AFC East crown. One that most people pretty much put on the Buffalo Bills' heads at the beginning of the year. And the Patriots, as they always do, they just win football games and they put themselves in a good position here. So this game opened at -2 on DraftKings, -1.5 on BetMGM. It's moved up a little bit now. The Patriots are a 2.5 point favorite in this game at home against Buffalo. What are you looking at here?
Well, the Patriots are only one game ahead of Buffalo. So given that they already beat the Bills once and the win this weekend would seal the deal, and this should be a much different game than the windy matchup we saw a few weeks back in Buffalo. And the Patriots did a good job at keeping the Bills offense quiet in that game, ran it down the Bills' throats. Mac Jones only attempted 3 passes the whole day. And then the Patriots' 2 running backs, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, had almost 200 yards on the ground that day. It wouldn't be surprising to you that didn't sit very well with the Bills team. They are pissed off after that game. They will be coming back with vengeance. And the Patriots lost last week and have responded well to losses this season. They are 3-1 in the following games. And meanwhile, the Bills have played really well on the road this year. So I think it's going to be a close matchup. I think if the Bills can follow the blueprint that the Colts basically laid out for them last Saturday night by running the ball, making Mac Jones try and win the game through the air, they could be successful in this game. So with that being said, I think they can pull off a W in this revenge game. It'll probably be a pretty low scoring game. I'm taking the under in the point total, and I think the Bills upset the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm with Brooke there. I think the best bet here is just to take the under. We don't know if Damian Harris is going to play in this game, but I don't really think it matters. Ramondre Stevenson is the kind of guy that's pretty durable. He can handle 20 carries if that's the way it is. And based on the way they beat Buffalo last time, I would kind of think that that's going to be their game plan again here, as long as the game stays close and they can just kind of pound the run and control the clock. That's probably the way they're going to do it. Attacking Buffalo on the ground is the way that, you can get to them. Their pass defense much better than their run defense, although, this is one of the top defenses in the league overall anyway. I don't know. I mean, what I'll basically say is this, is the Patriots are favored by 2.5. So if you like the Patriots, you lay the 2.5, take that at -110. If you like Buffalo, again, there's no reason to take +2.5 since it's below a field goal. So take the money line on the Buffalo side of it. That's the way you play this game. But I agree. I mean, this is one that it could go either way, and I'm not going to be surprised. But I do think it's going to be close. I do think it's going to be low scoring. To me, the path of least resistance is to go with the under here. So I'm on the same side as Brooke on this one. I think that's the best bet there. All right, so now let's talk about your Rams here. Your Rams taking on the Vikings. -3 is the spread on this game. Interesting though, it is juiced down, so you could actually get that -3 at even money plus 100 instead of having to lay the normal -110 juice on it. And they do that when it's a -3 because the books don't want to put it to -2.5 because then the field goal is out of play. Right now they get the push on the field goal here. So it's going to stay at -3, although they are going to mess with the payout. So if you're on the Ram side, which I'm pretty sure Brooke is going to be here, you could actually get them at even money, which is nice at, when you have to lay the 3 points. If you're on the other side with the Vikings here, I think it's like -120, which means that your payout will be like 81 cents on the dollar, I think, somewhere around there. But just keep that in mind because remember, standard juice is -110, 91 cent payout on standard juice. Anytime you have to go a little bit below that, you're not getting back the same kind of return. Now that I got all the betting stuff out of the way, what are you looking at here for this Rams and Vikings game?
I think it's an easy pick for me. You're not going to be surprised. The Rams are just a better team. And last night's game was not a great representation of this team, but they only had an absurd amount of adversity this week. Not only did more than half of the starters get COVID, they had their game postponed. So you're dealing with the logistics of that. Coaches like my brother who have COVID were watching from their couches at home. So they had to somehow get the guys under them up to speed to step up, fill their positions on game day. And then they also lost time this week to prepare for this Vikings matchup. So they had to begin preparation while still preparing for their last game last night. Seriously, a whirlwind, and I'm not sure if people actually understand how much craziness it causes to change their schedule. And the Vikings luckily played on Monday as well, so they're going to have a short week anyways. So now we get down to the actual game at hand. This Rams team is playing a lot better offensively than we have seen from the Vikings. And Minnesota's defense isn't much to write home about either. So I expect the Rams to have a beautifully crafted offensive game and crush the Vikings. I'm also taking the over on the 49-point total as I think the Rams will be seeing the end zone a lot. And I think the Vikings are just going to try and keep up and they're just going to get in the end zone, but not nearly as much as the Rams.
Yeah, one of the tough things for me to do when I was making my own lines this week is to kind of factor in how much of a detriment or advantage you want to give to these teams that are playing on 4 days rest or 3 days rest, like some of these teams, or I should say 5 days rest or 4 days rest, like some of these teams are here. This is one of the games where I didn't make as big an adjustment though, because like you mentioned, Minnesota played on Monday night as well. So, you really have one less day for the Rams, maybe about 1 point or so was all the adjustment I made. And I actually had them on a neutral field under normal conditions with normal rest and everything going. I had the Rams favored by about 5 in this game. So I think I put it down to -4, which means that I still think there's value at this -3 here. The fact that I could get it at even money as well, I'm on board. I'm on that side. I'm with Brooke on that one too. I like the Rams. Lay the -3 with them. I think they win. Shout out to Cooper Kupp for pushing me into a couple fantasy finals and semifinals with his big game last night. I actually needed that in some of my best balls because the rest of my receivers were pretty much either on COVID or did nothing this weekend. So him with the big 2-touchdown game, that was much needed. Shout out to Cooper Kupp. I love the fact that him and Matthew Stafford eat breakfast together every day. All right, so let's move on to the Ravens and the Bengals, another divisional rivalry here that I think is going to be a really good game. We don't know the status of Lamar Jackson yet. I don't know if we will have the status of Lamar Jackson until much closer to game day anyway. But you look at the number right now, it opened at Cincinnati -2.5, and that's pretty much where it is. There hasn't really been any movement on this line. With Lamar Jackson playing, I think that line is probably a little high, like I said last week at that game. Without Lamar Jackson playing, it might even be a little low. So I think what the books kind of did was split the difference between the two because we don't know about his status here. So if he is ruled in, I think there could be some value on the Ravens side. If he's ruled out, I think there's still some value on the Bengals side. Do you see it the same way, or what are you looking at with this one?
I'm actually thinking with or without Lamar. I think the Bengals were likely to be favorites in this game, and I'm taking them to win either way. This game is basically a pseudo AFC North championship game. Both teams 8-6, fighting for that top spot. And the Bengals won their first matchup of these two teams earlier this season. And now Lamar Jackson uncertain to play, as we said, due to that bone bruise in his ankle. But Tyler Huntley filled in and he's playing just fine. So with or without Lamar, as I said, I think that I will be taking the Bengals to win this game. Baltimore's defense is decimated with injuries as well. I think they'll put up a fight, but I think in the end, the Bengals are they're fighting. They're ready to go. They're hungry.
Yeah, interesting. Last week I said Lamar's probably worth about a touchdown or a little less than a touchdown to the Ravens side. After the way Huntley played last week, I had to make an adjustment to that. It's now more like a field goal is the way that I'm looking at it. Huntley played very well. I was really impressed with him. Of all these rookie quarterbacks and young quarterbacks that have played so far this year, outside of maybe Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence, there's probably not another guy I want more than Tyler Huntley. I think he made himself some money, whether it's with the Ravens or if they use him as a trade piece to another team. He looked better than a lot of these other rookie quarterbacks that have been out there and starting right now. So shout out to him. He's a kid that has a pretty storied history. Like he was a top player, Florida Player of the Year when he was a senior and all that stuff. So it's not like this kid came out of nowhere. It's just sometimes, and this in the NFL, sometimes you just need that opportunity to show what you can do. And I'll tell you what, if he puts up another game like he did last time, he's going to be in line to make some money and be a starter somewhere. And that's another kudos to the Ravens who draft very, very well and find these gems all the time. Whether or not he winds up being a Raven, he's somebody that they could trade for some draft picks or something to improve somewhere else on the team. So good for him, good for them. I'm glad to see the kid get a shot, and I'm glad to see him do well with it. Although it sucked for me because I did bet on Green Bay last week thinking he was going to suck, and he did not suck. He played very well. All right, so let's talk about the next game here. Denver Broncos, Las Vegas Raiders. Interesting. The Raiders are a 1.5 point favorite. It's kind of how it opened, kind of how it stayed so far throughout the week here. Are you looking at it as the Raiders are the side you want to be on here, or are you like the Broncos on the road?
I'm definitely thinking the Raiders for this game. Really, whoever loses this matchup loses out of playoff hopes. So it's kind of like not a very exciting game for either team. And for Denver, they'll be starting quarterback Drew Lock as Teddy Bridgewater was injured last week. And this is the biggest game of this young quarterback's career. Lucky for him, the Raiders have had a lot of issues on defense. So it's a perfect opportunity for Lock to come out and gain some confidence as a starter again. Lock went 6 of 12 for 88 yards with a touchdown versus the Bengals last week and lost a very key fumble in the game. So this matchup is simple for me. I just don't think Locke has what it takes to secure a win versus the Raiders, who are also fighting for that playoff spot, and they're going to be fighting hard for this one.
Yeah, I actually look at Drew Lock as a downgrade from Teddy Bridgewater as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I said if Lock is the starter in this game, it should be more than 1.5. It should actually be the Raiders favored by about a full field goal, if not more. So at this point, I do think the value would be on the Raiders side. If Teddy B played, I would think that this is more of a pick 'em here because I would still have the Broncos slightly better than the Raiders, but with the home field advantage, it would kind of even itself out. Um, but yeah, I mean, at this point, I just don't have any faith in Drew Lock. I don't think Denver has any faith in Drew Lock. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought in Teddy Bridgewater to begin with. They have a lot of weapons. I wouldn't be shocked if those weapons made some plays and they actually did put up a good score here. But I'm not really going to be willing to put any hard-earned or easy-earned betting money onto that this week. So the last game we're going to talk about, I think this is the Monday night game, the Miami Dolphins against the New Orleans Saints here. Let's see. The Saints are -3, although it is juiced up a little bit. It opened at -110. I think it's at like -120 or -125 on most sites right now, meaning that maybe it does move to Saints -3.5 at some point this week. But as of now, it's still right there at -3 if you're interested. The Saints are at home here, coming off a big victory against Tampa Bay. Miami coming off a big victory against the New York Jets, something they were supposed to do anyway, although they didn't cover in that game. So shout out to the Jets and Tino, who I know called that one the other day. But what are you looking at here with the Miami Dolphins and the New Orleans Saints?
This is actually a fun game. Both 7-7 teams that are still alive in the playoff race. And the Dolphins are on a 6-game win streak while the Saints have won 2 in a row now. Both teams rely heavily on their defenses to find success all season. And overall, Miami ranks 15th in the NFL by allowing 22.3 points per game, but they've held their opponents to 14.3 per game over just the last 3 matchups. And the Saints are in a similar position, ranking 6th in points allowed per game, holding their opponents to 20.4 in every outing. That number has now dropped to 12 over their last 3 games. So they're both improving on defense as well. And that includes the New Orleans shutout of Tom Brady and the Bucs. That was huge. I know they are coming high off of that one. So with that being said, I would bet the under on the 39.5 point total. And this is a tough game to predict. They're both fighting for their playoff shot. I think I'll put my trust in the team that's controlling the clock on another level, and that's the Saints, which we saw beautifully play out versus the Bucs last week. So I'm taking the under, and I'm taking the Saints to cover on Sunday. And I think if you do, you'll be glad you did.
Yeah, I'm going to be in 100% agreement on both of those with you here. One thing that we know, and we talked about this last year when Taysom Hill was the quarterback, it changes the way that the Saints play football, right? They're not throwing the ball as much downfield. They're playing a lot more ball control. They're doing a lot more running right there. And the scores of those games last year when Taysom Hill was in there were coming into the under. Now, here's the one thing I will say, though. 39.5 is a really low number for an NFL football game. We've had a low scoring couple of weeks here, especially with all the COVID news and all the injuries and everything else. That is a low number here. So I was originally saying, oh, I want to be on the under here, which is something that I do whenever Taysom Hill is the quarterback because basically they rely on the run game and the defense. I don't know if I could go under 39.5 here, though. I would rather just play the Saints. I do think the Saints are going to win this game. So I think the better side to be on is just laying the -3 with the Saints. But I agree with you. It's going to be a low scoring game. I don't expect this to be like 35-24 or anything like that. But it's just so low. Like 24-17 is an over. Like 24-17 is almost never an over in the NFL, but that would be an over in this game. So I don't really want to mess with the total here. I like the Saints on that side. I'd rather just play the Saints -3. To me, that's the better bet. So there you go. That wraps it up for the games we wanted to talk about here. For Week 16, Christmas week, NFL action. There is a Thursday night game coming up. There will be a couple games on Christmas Day, on Saturday, and then the rest of the schedule will be played out on Sunday and Monday. And, depending on how this COVID stuff happens, we may even have a Tuesday game again this week too. So we'll see how that all works out. Brooke, let everybody know where they can find you.
Find me at Brooke Kromer. I'll be going crazy on the tweets this week with the Rams game. So nuts. So at Brooke Kromer, Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, and from all of us over here at the FTN family, we want to wish all of you and your families a happy holidays. Yes. Whatever you celebrate there, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, all that good stuff out there. It should be a fun weekend. Open your presents, hang out, watch some football Saturday and Sunday. Try not to eat too much. Try not to drink too much. And if you do drink, make sure you're not driving. We want you all to be here to watch the show next week. So for Brooke Kromer, this is Benny Ricciardi signing off for another episode of Betting with Brooke and Benny here at FTN Bets.